Good afternoon, ladies, gentlemen, and all of my NB friends. You are tuned into Sacred Voices on KGNU. My name is Astin. I am on the board of directors for Sacred Voices, and joining me here today, I have Ale from Student Voice, Student Vote. How are you today, Ale?
I'm doing great.
Great, and we will be hearing a lot from you in just a moment. First, I want to touch on what Sacred Voices is. Sacred Voices is a nonprofit organization based in Denver, Colorado. We serve Indigenous youth and Indigenous peoples throughout the Front Range by offering an open mic hosted monthly at 700 Calumet Street on the fourth Friday of every month. For the month of August, that is on August 28th, and that'll be at 6:30 p.m. Check our website, sacred-voices.org, for more information. And we also offer poetry and spoken word workshops throughout local schools and through our own platform. But today we are talking with Ale about the organization that she works for. So, Ale, can you tell us a bit about yourself and this organization?
Yeah, so I was born and raised here in Denver, and I began my work in activism through focusing on education policy. And through that work, that activism, I realized that it's very hard to get any changes done without with with board members in our district who don't really listen or value what students have to say. And I was doing activism in education policy for about 2 or 3 years, and it's clear that there's a lot of tokenism. So that's kind of what got me involved with Student Voice, Student Vote. And we're a coalition that's trying to drop the voting age from 18 to 16 and 17 in just school board elections and mill-levy bonds.
Right. The one thing I've heard a lot of commotion about is that push to lower the voting age to 16 or 17. I know that especially for the older generations, people over like 30 or so, it can seem pretty controversial to them. Can you make a quick argument for why the voting age should be lowered?
Yeah, for me, I look at my peers, the youth, the same way I look at adults, because honestly, we all act the same. I've worked in campaigns for governors, for mayors, and I've phone banked. And the argument I usually hear when talking to like our state representatives or state senators about our bill, I usually hear that we're not as well informed or we don't know enough. But in reality, I don't think all adults are well informed or know enough either. And I think it's up to the individual. I feel like I'm mature enough to be able to do my research and figure out who's the best person to represent my values and what I need in my schools. And I know that's true for plenty of other students, and I don't think it should be cut off because there's few students that are considered immature, because I know a lot of adults who I still see as immature.
Right. Yeah, that has definitely been apparent in our society over the past few years in particular. A lot of the amendments and laws that have been voted on recently have been met with curious results. And also the fact that, a lot of the younger people who are 18 to 25, let's say, they don't vote that much. And my guess would be that that's because a lot of the issues being presented aren't really tailored towards them. They feel like they don't have too much of a voice. Do you think that by lowering it to 16, that the youth voice would become that much more powerful?
Definitely. It's actually been proven that the younger you start voting, the more likely you are to become a lifelong voter. So I definitely think that if students were given, because we already know what we need in our schools, and for some people it might seem radical, for some people it might seem like too much to ask, but if you really want students to be engaged in their education, then they gotta have an education that they enjoy.
Um, so, talking about getting the young people engaged and giving them the motivation to vote, how would you propose getting these 16, 17, 18-year-olds really excited about voting? Because the youngest demographic of voters seems to be the least enthusiastic about voting.
Well, I think it's important to. One thing I always see is that, like, I see my peers complain about how the curriculum is boring, or I don't know, like policies that they don't like. And it's, for me, I always connect it back to, okay, well, who's creating these policies, or who started this, or, like trying to get to the root of the issue.
Right.
And a lot of my peers don't really know. They know the issues, but they don't really understand the terminology for it. So
Yeah.
it's, for me, it's more about just giving them the tools to like tie things together, you know?
Yeah, I remember being in high school and being frustrated a lot of the time by the curriculum and by the policies in place, and how a lot of my peers would feel the same way. But and I wasn't in high school too long ago, but back then we really didn't have the motivation to get to the root of that, the root cause of that issue. Um, what is it that you think in the past few years has really motivated young people to try and solve these issues and to go to the root?
I don't necessarily know about other generations, but like in regards to my generation, I know that we look at our community and our parents and our siblings, and we know that what's set right now is not what we want for the future. And what really motivates our our generation is just to get structural change. And it's not just like a group of like 16, 17-year olds that are already like active in the community. It's also the skateboarders, it's also the fashion designers. It's everywhere. And I don't think it's just a trend within our age range. I think it's coming from a genuine point of wanting change.
I think so too. I see a lot of people from several different generations who are interested in seeing this change and seeing how they can really attack the structural root of these problems. So let's talk some specifics here. So you're talking about trying to change some things within the schools, maybe some school board issues or what have you. What would you like to see different in schools right now?
Something I was working on, I just graduated, but something I was working on was getting police out of schools. And I was also working on addressing the teacher retention rate within our schools, the lack of teachers of colors within our schools. And kind of, I know these are large issues, But one thing we're lacking within these issues are student perspectives. Like, we can't have discussions about these issues without asking the students, who are the largest stakeholders in these issues, what they want or what they think would help.
Right. And I'm not sure which district you're based in, but I know that in Denver Public Schools, they, I believe, recently voted to get the police out of schools. Is that correct?
Yes, and that was from DPS.
Right. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a large part of that was the efforts of the new director of the school board, Tay Anderson, who is
Yeah.
a pretty young elected official, all things considered.
Yeah. Even before, I want to give a shout out to Tay Anderson, because even before he was elected, he was supporting the Student Voice, Student Vote campaign, and he promised that we would help bring it to the DPS board and create a resolution for them to officially endorse us. And I really appreciate that.
And I think that speaks to the power of the youth vote, because he is, I think, 21, 22 right now, and he's really done a lot to further this change. And I know that he's been on the front lines of a lot of the recent protests and everything for Black Lives Matter. So it seems like the youth voice is what will propel a lot of these changes forward, and that seems to be backed by your organization. Is that the case?
Yeah.
Great. Well, let's see here. So, how would you, what do you think about the way that school districts currently are handling the COVID pandemic crisis? I know that at the end of the last school year, they were kind of blindsided by it, and the switch to online learning was a bit messy, as you could expect. But with all of the preparation now, how do you feel about schools starting up again in the coming weeks? Are you optimistic or not?
I am very worried, honestly, especially for low-income communities, which also happen to be predominantly people of color, because COVID is not something to play around about. I know some people don't think it's real, but like, people are dying from COVID, and people are going in debt because of COVID. People are losing their homes because of COVID. And to add the stress of sending a child to school, but also understanding that schools are more than just a school for some students. Schools are also like homes, shelter. So it's very stressful to think about, because I understand that there's a lot at stake. And honestly, I'm worried about the mental health of students not being considered within these decisions, like figuring out how we can still give students mental health supports, or even, because I know within Denver public schools we would have Denver Health, and like, it would give us free like checkups. And that's something, like, I've never gone to a doctor. I've only gone to like Denver Health or the school nurse for like medical support, or even I think about the special education students, because I understand that they require a lot of support, and some parents cannot provide that support while also going to work. And I just hope that, I don't know, because let me think. I just think that it would just increase COVID rates if schools were to open. But I also understand that schools are a support to communities. And education is important as a whole. So it's very stressful to think about.
It is very stressful. There's a lot of moving parts there because, for me personally, I have a bit of a stake in it because my mom is an elementary school teacher, so what I hear from her is that going online is the smart move to reduce the spread of COVID, but at the same time, if both family members are essential workers and are out all day at work, it's not exactly feasible to leave a 10-year-old at home all day long. So there are a lot of different issues involved with that. And I think that generally the districts in Colorado that I've seen have decided to do virtual learning at the start of the year, but I'm not too sure how that's going to really play out in the long run, if it's going to be effective or if it'll fall apart. So there are some concerns, but let's see. So DPS, I believe, is scheduled to come back to in-person learning in October. Do you think that's going to happen, or should it?
I think it's going to happen regardless of where COVID goes, just based off of how strict they were in the beginning of this whole pandemic to now. So I'm pretty sure schools will reopen. Should it? I honestly don't know. I feel like in terms of students getting their education, for me, I know that I learned best in person or in contact with others. I'm a social butterfly, People bring out energy, and through that I radiate energy as well. But when I'm at home, it's really hard to concentrate, and it's honestly hard to understand the content. So I think they should, because I think schools should open in terms of like education and giving students true learning experiences. But at the same time, COVID is not, I don't think COVID's gonna go away until a while. So
Yeah, there's really there's no getting around it until there's a vaccine, I think.
yeah.
But so you were in school the previous spring semester then. You talked about it a little bit, but how was the experience with virtual learning, especially right at the start where just one day it was decided nobody's coming to school, we're all going to be online? What was that like?
It was a blessing and a curse. I will say that. It was a blessing in terms of I needed that time to like really teach myself, and the whole quarantine allowed me to read books I didn't have time to read, allowed me to start gardening, start planting. And I still think that's education, But I
Yeah.
was falling behind in my classes, whether it was because I forgot to mark myself present, or if it was because I didn't understand the due dates for an assignment, And each and every teacher had different guidelines for how they were going to go about with the whole quarantine situation. So it was very confusing.
It seems like, if you have 7 or 8 teachers, you're going to have 7 or 8 different ways that you have to do something. It's not standardized in any way, and that's probably very difficult.
Yeah, it was difficult.
And so you graduated in May, is that right?
Correct.
How was that like? How did that even work?
Well, I still don't even have my diploma, to be honest. I just, I know I graduated, and um, they ended up having a graduation ceremony like a few weeks ago. I didn't end up going to it because I didn't feel comfortable, but
It was in person somewhere?
yeah, it was in person at my school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
I don't know.
that doesn't seem great. It's I mean, it's already August, and you're saying only a few weeks ago is when that actually happened, and you still don't have your diploma. That's not a great situation. I mean, how does it? I'm guessing this isn't how you imagined graduating. How have you been coping with that?
Honestly, it just changed my whole trajectory of like my my future. Not necessarily my future plans, but like my steps towards my future. So originally I was gonna go to Arizona State University, and when the whole pandemic happened, like I didn't really have the supports from counsel counselors to like navigate how to go about the college process, the financial aid stuff. So I ended up deciding to stay here in Colorado, which I actually don't mind. Like I love my state. But I ended up staying here. I'm now looking for an apartment to stay at, and I'm trying not to think about like, oh, I missed prom, I missed graduation, and all of that because there's larger issues, you know? I don't know. I'm kind of just, it took me aback a little, but
I can
nothing's
imagine.
stopping it. Yeah.
That yeah, whenever I really think about the way this is affecting our youth in particular, it takes me back to thinking about how a lot of these big moments in a person's life are interrupted by this, and how there's not really a good replacement currently, and that it's kind of on the back burner until we can figure some other things out. Um, but for this last few minutes here, let's turn it back to your work with your organization. So, we've talked about the push to get to lower the voting age. What other initiatives are you focused on in your organization?
Well, currently we are trying to gather data for the school board, not for the school board, but to present to the school board, with its next steps on getting police out of schools. Like, what are they gonna do with the money? How are they gonna consider youth voices when making these decisions to reallocate the budget? So we're trying to get youth perspectives on what they think should the school board should prioritize when having those discussions. And it's still an open survey, so if anybody would like to take it, it's bit.ly/DPS budget survey. I'm sorry, I was thinking about what it was.
That's okay.
But
I'm
that's what we're focusing on right now.
That's good. And I'm sure that anybody listening, I encourage you to go check out that survey as well, because the financial aspect of that, it is really important. When you propose taking the police out of schools, it does leave that question of like, well, where is this budget going to go? There are plenty of places where it could go and probably shouldn't, because I know that a lot of aspects of education are underfunded currently.
Mm-hmm.
So where ideally would you like to see it go? Is that something that your organization has discussed?
Well, our organization is we're neutral in the whole thing. We're not pushing for like more counselors or anything like that, even though I agree that we should have more counselors. But that's like a personal um, value for me. I
Right.
also think that there should be more after school programming and more mentorship opportunities for my peers.
Right.
But that's a personal opinion. That's not my organization's stance. We're pretty neutral when it comes to all of that.
Gotcha. That makes sense. I understand. So what advice would you give to incoming seniors for the 2021 school year who are looking at the future and thinking, I don't know how this is going to work? What would you say to them?
I would say to please, please, please check your emails and don't be afraid to email your teachers. Let them know when you're having a hard time, because that's honestly what helped me out for a while. I was having the worst time, having the hardest time, and all it took was an email to really get me back on track. So really take advantage of that email. And if you don't know how to write an email, use Google. Google helped me. And just keep it pushing. It's your last year. You got it. You didn't come this far for nothing.
That sounds great. So if you joined us in the middle of that somewhere, I have been talking with Ale from Student Voice, Student Vote. How can people learn more about your organization? Is there a website? Is there a social media presence?
Yeah, so we're on Facebook. You can find us at Student Voice, Student Vote. And you could search up SV2 Colorado for our Instagram and Twitter.
Great. And for your own personal stuff, do you have like a page where you're doing activism type things, or you're posting about the organization that you'd like to plug?
Oh, you can add me on Facebook at Alessandra Chavira or Alessandra Chavi on Twitter. Or if you want to follow my Instagram, it's Alessandra the OG. Yes, the OG.
That's great. Well, Ale, thank you for talking with me today. If you are interested in learning more about Sacred Voices, you can visit us online at sacred-voices.org or look us up on Facebook or Instagram at Sacred Voices Denver. Our next poetry open mic will be at 700 Kalamath Street in the Santa Fe Arts District on August 28th at 6:30 p.m. Please contact us for more details. The audience will be all virtual. You can attend virtually on our Facebook page if you'd like to perform. Please reach out to us. Once again, we've been talking to Ale from Student Voice, Student Vote. Thank you so much for your time, Ale.
Thank you.
And we will see you all next time. Thank you.